Hello everyone, my name is Tahsin and today I will talk about Arduino, a microcontroller-based development board. Today's agenda looks like this. First, I will give you a couple of fun ideas that you can do with your Arduino. Then I will start talking about Arduino. So I will start with what a microcontroller and a microprocessor are. Then I will tell the interesting story of Arduino, and I will teach you how to use an Arduino with 4 steps. And I will end everything with giving you a couple of some application ideas. So if you have hard time waking up in the morning, you can make a robot that will splash water on your face whenever your alarm rings go on. If you don't have any time to clean your floor, you can make your own Roomba with Arduino, and a Roomba is basically a robot that will clean the floors for you. And let's say you're watching Game of Thrones and you want to turn off your lights and you don't want to leave your bed, you can do that with your Arduino if you know how to use an Arduino. And if a person wants to learn about Arduino, the first thing they need to know is the difference between the microprocessor and the microcontroller. So microprocessor is a chip that acts as a brain, and since it's a brain, it can perform very complex tasks. However, it requires other hardware to function, such as power, input, output. On the other hand, microcontroller acts as a neural network with just a part of brain, and it's just part of a brain because it can only do specific simple tasks. However, it has a neural network, so it doesn't require any additional hardware. And what Arduino does fantastic is that it combines both of them. In 2003, this young gentleman, Fernando Bergen, published his thesis in Interactive Design Institute in Italy. He said that he wanted to combine microprocessors with microcontrollers on a single board with additional hardware, and he created wiring. And after 2003, he started to sell this wiring product and everyone started to buy it. However, on 2025, the institute got closed, and 2 of Fernando Bergen's mentors throughout his thesis, these 2 gentlemen, started Team Arduino, which is basically the same microprocessor, only it's lighter and it costs $10 less. An interesting fact is that this team never included Fernando Bergen, so he never made as much money as the other guys did. Sad. So, and as you saw, Arduino was invented almost 15 years ago and it has been used widely. To use an Arduino, I created 4 easy steps. The first one is wiring, the second one is coding, transferring, and you will finalize everything with finalize. And to demonstrate each of these steps, I created a project of mine, which is basically a parking sensor, and it will basically do, whenever you get closer to a solid object, the beeper will start to beep more frequently to warn you. The first step is wiring. I had a book that walked me through each of these steps, and it had this picture, which is called a wiring diagram. You can find all of these wiring diagrams online as well. You don't need to have a book. All I did was I literally got these 2 sensors, the beeper and the sensor. I already had the Arduino, and I just plugged everything in the same way. It only took me 3 minutes. It was very straightforward. And I will explain it later, but Arduino is an open source, so you can always find these wiring diagrams online as well. The second step is coding. Again, I didn't write any of this code. I copy-pasted this code from online from this website. Since it's an open source, you don't need to create your own code. You can just take the code from online. All you need to do is have a proper citation in the beginning or wherever in your code you want. So you don't need to waste a lot of time on creating new code. The third step is the easiest one. All you need to do is plug your Arduino into your computer through a USB, and you will just click this button and it will put all of this code in the Arduino, and Arduino will run the same code as long as you give it power and as long as you don't put any new code into it. And the last part is you finalize everything, you test out everything, and this is how it looks. Okay, there's no sound. But it does it, it just beeps much frequently whenever I get closer to the wall. If you are making a complex stuff, you will probably run into problems in this step. So what you need to do is you need to go back to your first step and redo, take a look at all of your wiring and try to figure out where you made a mistake. If you think everything is good, you can go to your code. You need to, again, debug everything, and then you will transfer everything and you will do the finalizing. So it's as simple as that, but the question now becomes, why do you need to learn Arduino specifically? And I will give you three reasons for that. It has a great layout, it has a very user-friendly app, and the most importantly, it's an open source environment. Arduino has a layout that looks like this. You can see all of these pins, they all are printed very well. And another good part is that all the Arduinos in the world has the same layout. So whenever you go to a wiring diagram and you want to have the same wiring, even if you have no idea what 5V does or A0 means, all you need to do is just plug in everything in the same spot and it will work. Also, Arduino has a very user-friendly app. This is where you write all of your code and then you will transfer the code into Arduino through this app as well. And if you don't have much experience with coding, it will start with this that will run the necessary codes for you. You will have a loop, so if you don't want to deal with creating for loops, it already does everything for you, so it's much simpler to learn. Also, the app is color-coded, so if you are defining integers or another type, it will make them blue. If you are calling specific functions, it will make them orange. And as your code gets more complex, it will get much easier to debug. Finally, and most importantly, Arduino is an open source environment, which means that you do not need to reinvent the wheel. As you've seen, my parking sensor, I didn't do any of the work. I just take a look at online, or in my case, I looked at my book. I just follow each step. Everything was really clear, and it worked. If I wanted to edit it to another robotic project that I'm working on, I can just use the same code and change the necessary integers or other stuff, and as long as I cite where I got the code, it's all good. Also, there are forums online where you can ask your questions, and 99% of the time a person in the world has already run into the same problem and solved it, and they are willing to help you. Hundreds of thousands of people are using Arduino every day, so it's most likely that someone already encountered in the same problem, and they will give you the solution for that. Finally, I want to talk about different applications in different types of engineerings that you can use with Arduino. If you're a mechanical engineer, you can control a motor with an Arduino. If you're a chemical engineer, you can measure the carbon monoxide level in the air, and if you're a civil engineer, you can have a moisture sensor. And with Arduino, you can collect data and prepare the necessary graphs, and you can export everything into the Excel so that you will not waste any time copying, pasting, and creating graphs on Excel. And finally, if you're a computer engineer and if you don't want to burn any of your hardware, you can control the current flow through a certain hardware. Thank you all for listening to me.
How expensive is it to get one?
So it ranges from $10 to $35. The original Arduinos are $35. It has a brand name like that. If you are okay with not having the brand name, it goes as low as $8.
So does it use like, it's like when you're coding in the software, is it like its own coding language, or can you use like?
It's a simpler version of C, so it's basically a C++ code. So if you're familiar with C++, you will have no problem with it.
Were there any sort of like legal issues that happened between the original inventor and the inventor?
So since when he started it as an open source environment, he published all of his stuff. So it's legally okay to copy everything, but morally, I think that there have been so many issues. He published an article of like 10 to 15 pages 2 or 3 years ago explaining how everything happened. He was just upset that they used all of this, and apparently he came up with the idea of having a separate app to code with the color coding and everything, and they replicated the same idea as well, and they were his mentors throughout his thesis.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.